Thanks for having us. Oh.
And we're live. All right, everyone. Super excited to be here today. I am Allie Wyatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective and the 10th House, which is our private membership community, and also the North, which is our expert marketplace. And we are in celebration of launching our women's health cohort. I am here with two amazing inspirational leaders in the women's health space who are paving the way for the future. So super excited to be talking to them today. We are closing out our cohort I think it's April 4th. I'm going to verify that. So stay tuned for more information on that. But without further ado, cannot wait to get into this with you all because we have a lot of questions. And by the way, we were just talking about this before we went live. We have over 70 questions from this amazing community. So super excited.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
We
dive
will
in.
not get to all of them, or are we going to try to get to all of them?
I'm going to try to speed through. So without further ado, I'm actually going to introduce Hallie. She has been introduced to you all before, but I'm excited to introduce her again because I'm super inspired by her body of work and that she's an entrepreneur and an investor, and she's passionate about fixing our healthcare system. She's been investing in the future of healthcare since 2011 as an angel and an LP. She has invested in some of your favorite companies, including Tia. I'm also an investor in that, big fan. Poppy Seed Health, Loon, Everly Health, is it Avia? Avia, and more. And she is the founder and co-founder of Co-Fertility, Natalist, which was acquired by Everly Health. So she's had an exit. There goes my light. I'm going to have to pause for a second so I can go back. And digital health venture fund, Rock Health. She's also the adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where she's created and has taught the first MBA level course on digital health investing since 2015. So huge body of work again there. So super excited to have your expertise. But Lauren also is super impressive as well. She's the co-founder and CEO of Co-Fertility, which is a human-first fertility ecosystem rewriting the egg freezing and egg donation experience. Previously, as an early Uber employee, she founded Uber Health, a product that enables healthcare organizations to leverage Uber's massive driver network in improving healthcare outcomes through patient transportation and healthcare delivery. And under her leadership, the business helped millions of patients get to the care that they needed. And prior to that, Lauren spent the early days of Uber launching the core business throughout the East Coast and led the company's first experiment in healthcare national demand flu shot campaigns. Super, super smart. And after a rare disease diagnosis, Lauren's fertility journey led her to believe that everyone should have the opportunity to freeze their eggs and that there should be better access to egg donors. She lives in LA along with her husband and their miracle baby girl. And I live out here too. And we are both laughing that it's raining in LA. And so it's like the world stops, our Wi-Fi might go out, our lights might go out. You guys, this isn't actually my power going out. It's it's energy conservation. The lights are on a timer and I apparently forgot to reset it. So I am going to jump up and reset them. But while I do that, I'm going to ask you guys to share a little bit about how you became co-founders, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, happy to. We're so excited to be here. I think this community, there are the lights, is the absolute best. And it's just a total honor for us to be a part of it. I joke that Hallie was, for me, this just sort of role model in digital health, in female entrepreneurship, in so many ways, right? We had, it's sort of years ago, I think it was just a really small group of women that were both, young and female and out there trying to change things. And so it was a really small world. And so Hallie and I had crossed paths at digital health conferences and just had this mutual respect for one another. Mine was probably this role model, work crush, oh my God, she's the be all and end all. And I remember one day I followed her on Instagram, and I remember she followed me back. And I was like, what do I do? Right. And I had asked, and I was still at Uber at the time. And I had asked, hey, do you have a few minutes sometime? I'm trying to figure out what's next for me. And we touched base for a 15-minute call at one point. And that was that. It was just exciting to know her. And then a year went by, and out of the blue, I had engaged on her social. She engaged in mine, just, internet friends.
Mutual girl crush.
Oh, thanks. Total internet friendship. And she out of the blue DM'd me and was like, how's fundraising going? And I was like, what are you talking about? I was not fundraising, didn't have a company, none of that. And so I had actually just given notice at Uber, but I hadn't made that public. I hadn't put it on LinkedIn, hadn't put it on Instagram or anything. And I said to her, I was like, not fundraising, but if any of your portfolio companies are hiring, I just gave notice at Uber, and I deeply want to do something in the reproductive health space. So let me know. And her response was, you're on the market. What's your phone number? I'm calling you. And I remember coming down the stairs, showing my husband my phone. Hallie Tecco's calling me right now. Hallie Tecco's calling me. What's happening? And I'm being a millennial, totally afraid of the phone ringing, right? And Hallie was like, I've had this idea around egg freezing and egg donation that I just cannot get out of my brain, and I have to talk to you about it. And so when she shared the idea, which is ultimately what we've started building, what we now have out in the world at Cofertility, it was 1,000% in alignment with everything I wanted to do, both personally and professionally. You mentioned that I had a rare disease, and long story short, I was diagnosed with a super rare disease that meant I may lose my ovaries in a number of surgeries. And I was told that I may need an egg donor. And so I went down the path of what would it mean if I had an egg donor? What is the process like? And as someone who was really off-put by what I saw out there, and I'm sure we can share more about that, it was really an off-putting experience. My sister decided to freeze her eggs and donate them to me in case I needed them someday. Mm-hmm. I later went on to not lose my ovaries and conceive my daughter without using my sister's eggs. But when Hallie came to me about this egg donation idea, I was totally mind blown. So essentially,
so, Hallie, you didn't know that she potentially wanted to do this, and did you?
I knew she was sniffing around in women and reproductive health, and I heard the grapevine that she was interested in starting a company, which is why I was like, "How's fundraising?" Because I was more interested as an angel, to be able to back someone with her level of experience was really interesting to me. But then when she was like, "Oh, I'm kind of looking around," I was like, "Okay, well, I have something for you." The timing was just really perfect.
I think this is such a beautiful lesson, though, too, for founders that are listening in that are building businesses. If you have a really talented background, or you believe in yourself enough to go out and start a business, angel investors that are in your category are going to be so excited about what you're building and wanting to be on that journey too, right? So I think a lot of founders are often afraid of going out and fundraising or connecting with that angel for fear that imposter syndrome a little bit, but you never know. You never know. But Hallie, what made you decide to take the leap into becoming an official co-founder?
Yeah.
Right. And how did you sort of decide?
For me, the biggest lesson, and this is something I want everyone to know, is you can have the entrepreneurial bug, but know that you're not a CEO operator. And that is a lesson I kind of learned on the ground.
Wow.
Being, I started Natalist. I was the CEO of Natalist until I promoted our COO to my job, and I took another role. I learned after about a year of being a CEO that that's not the best role for me. And actually a really good role for me is to find very qualified women and really supporting them in the role of CEO. And that is actually very similar to my work as an investor. But you can be involved in the earliest stages of a company without being the CEO. And I think, as an MBA and in the MBA world, you have this sense of the CEO is the ultimate title. And for a lot of people it is. And for Lauren was born to be a CEO. She's a phenomenal CEO. And I love that she's in this role. And it's something that's just not for me. I'm just not good at that job. It is not the best use of my time.
I think that's so interesting, and sorry to interrupt you, but I'm trying to know what sort of characteristics you felt you didn't possess to be a
Yeah.
CEO? Because so many founders, I think you think, oh, I need to be the CEO because it's
Yeah.
my company. But like a lot of
I
times
will tell you, I am born an independent contributor. I'm really
Yeah.
good at doing the work and kind of doing my own thing. I'm less good at specifically managing people and managing teams. I can strategically think about what roles different people can have and how I can support them. But being a CEO is ultimately empowering a team and helping them do their best work. And that's the biggest part of your job as the CEO. And that is not my skill set. I'm good at ideating. I'm good at coming up with strategies. I'm good at fundraising. I'm good at all these other things, but I know that I'm really not the best people manager. And so, and I know Lauren is, and she had a ton of experience building, growing teams, and helping employees really bring their best selves to work, find the right work for them, identify that right work, help develop their skills. And some people just most people love doing that. That's like, I would say probably more people like that kind of managerial aspect of executive leadership than don't like it. I think I'm kind of an oddball for an MBA to not like feel like that's my wheelhouse. But I love like product development and kind of doing all the work that does not involve managing people. Like managing people is just not my thing.
But it's such a good point. And I think, as a CEO and sort of thinking about, what goes into that, and leadership it's something you have to also keep honing and looking inwards and figuring out, and also coaching everybody else, because you ultimately have to delegate and you can't do it all to scale.
Yeah. There's a difference between being a cheerleader and being like the head coach.
Right.
And I think like, Lauren very much was like built to be a head coach. The coach of the team. We're like, I'm really good at, I don't know, maybe I'm an assistant coach. Maybe that's like a better way to put it. Or like being on the sidelines. And so for me, like I had this idea, I wanted to help bring it to life, but I really wanted it to find from day one, the right partner, the right leader that would actually build this company. I mean, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about execution. I know that. And so having, the right partner who was in the time of their career where they were really ready for this sort of challenge was like, for me, the key. And it all kind of came together. Like I didn't go to anyone else. Like this wasn't like me trying to shop this around to like other people. It was like, I was just kind of the stars aligned and it all worked out really well.
Well, I love this story. I am going to pivot into the healthcare part of it, but I think it's like such a crucial and foundational thing to talk about as founders, right? And building any type of business and figuring out how to scale. But I want to talk about healthcare in general. And really, I know that part of sort of Co-Fertility's promise is to make things much more accessible, right? Because as we know, fertility is super, super expensive and hard to access. But in general, there are system issues that tend to exist within healthcare because it's largely in the hands of big pharma and makes the system super complicated and very difficult to penetrate. So for those of us who are passionate about making a change, how do you go about that? How do you start to think about like breaking into this great big system that has a really deep foundation?
I'm happy to start. There's a lot here, and we could spend 45 minutes talking about this. The first thing I will say is we say healthcare system, but what we really mean is 1,000 little systems that work sometimes together, but more often or not, work kind of against each other. And a big piece of the difficulty building in healthcare is that the incentives are very misaligned. And the folks that are responsible for covering your health insurance, which for the majority of Americans is our employers, for them, a lot of women's health is preventive. For instance, egg freezing is a really good example of something that you do now with the intention of using the eggs down the line. And it's something that they don't have the long-term incentives to make those investments up front. And so a big piece of the challenge is trying to find a lot of the work is concentrated on like very short ROI, very aligned incentive things that are low hanging fruit. And a lot of the bigger problems that we have yet to tackle are because the payers, the folks who are responsible for managing all of our healthcare, just don't have the long-term outlook that we do. And so what's happened is, and some companies very few, but some companies are offering things like egg freezing as a benefit, as a perk, but they're purely doing it to attract and retain employees. They don't see it within a model of long-term health and well-being for people. It's more like, maybe we can attract more women to Facebook if we offer this as a benefit. And so in that light, it's really not looked at as a healthcare offering, but really looked at as a perk the way dry cleaning is considered a perk of working somewhere. So I think in terms of like where to start, I fully believe that immersing yourself in the problem, becoming an expert in the problem is where you want to start no matter what corner of healthcare you're working in. A lot of people come to healthcare, like Lauren and myself, and come to women's health because of our own frustrations with the system. And I think that's a great place to start, because if you're inspired by your own experiences, you always kind of have that patient perspective. And I think that's really powerful. But even if you don't have that perspective, I think spending a ton of time with the stakeholders that you're trying to serve and including them in what you're building. And that can look a lot of different ways. Like when we first got started, Lauren kind of spearheaded this multi-100-person survey to understand what are the biggest pain points and barriers to egg freezing. And we surveyed, was it like 800, 900 women to kind of get a quantitative sense of what are the biggest barriers that we can then fit our solution into. And then also then you kind of go deeper once you have like some more high level quantitative stuff, doing a lot of qualitative research, which is a lot of interviews, a lot of just putting yourself in the place where the care is happening and really trying to understand the motivations and the needs of the population that you're trying to serve. Laura, I'm sure you have like a ton more to add to that, because you came to Uber and then moved into health once you were already in Uber.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, Lauren, to hear about sort of that experience with Uber, with a big corporation at your back versus starting your own company too in this, and then how you've gone about specifically with co-fertility, making it a lot more accessible.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I went to Northeastern in Boston, which is like a co-op school where you spend 6 months working full time somewhere. And I did one of my co-ops at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, where I learned about social determinants of health, right? This idea that your zip code tells you more about your health than your genetic code does, right? Like it really blew my mind. And
that is insane. That's an insane stat.
Yeah. And so I never lost, even though I went into advertising and didn't really plan to work in healthcare, I never forgot about social determinants of health. And so when I got to Uber and I saw that so many issues in healthcare related to transportation, right? Like access to care is with low income and elderly patients is so much about, does someone have a ride, right? Blew my mind that something so simple is what prevents people to getting to that care. And so I just became obsessed with it, frankly. I just could not stop thinking about it. And I felt wow, if Uber has a very reliable means of fixing this problem, if we put take the existing ingredients Uber already has into a new recipe, we could solve this problem. And so for me, it was about entrepreneurship, right? Can I be relentless, put pen to paper about an idea, not only talk about why this would matter for the world, but why should this big for-profit company care about the business opportunity here as well? And I just tried to make my argument work for whichever stakeholders I was talking about, which is something that I have now taken with me even further. But basically, I just was relentless until they said yes. And actually this past weekend ran into my old boss who finally said yes about Uber Health. And he was bet you're still relentless. Yes, I am. You have to be as a founder. And so for me, it was I just believed that Uber needed to be in that space. And so with co-fertility, I feel so strongly, and I know we'll talk more about access to egg freezing and things like that, but I couldn't get the idea out of my brain. And you have to feel that way about something if you're going to go all in and be a founder. And it has to be the thing you want to think about when you're taking a shower. It has to be the thing you want to think about when you're taking your dog for a walk, and that you will never get sick of talking about.
When you're in Hawaii with your husband.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Everywhere and anywhere. And so I think that it's just with healthcare specifically, just tailor what you're doing to whoever you're talking about and get them to care.
And when you're talking about that, right, are you creating some sort of business case of like, this could increase your profits by this, or like you could open up this big of an opportunity from a, like, can you give a couple examples of maybe how you did that? Because I think that's such a good point. And I think it's an overall sales lesson, right? Of like how to be persuasive, and it's good for any founder, no matter what industry.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's different in intrapreneurship than it is in entrepreneurship. I think like when I was meeting with like the social responsibility team at Uber, I did not talk about the business opportunity. But when I was meeting with the strategic finance team, I like absolutely did, right? Like, you know, when you're trying to get someone to give you, you know, 8 engineers like headcount, right? Like that is real material dollars that they need to know what the ROI is going to be of them, like honing up like headcount. And I think similarly, like there are so many ideas out there that you could go to an investor with to be like, wouldn't this be amazing for the world? But really at the end of the day, they want to know how big is the addressable market? Like how big is the opportunity? Is it going to give them the returns they expect in a specific period of time in the same way they would any other investment? So just because it's healthcare doesn't make anybody like think about it differently, right? Like maybe they're attracted to the mission-driven nature of it, but I don't think it makes them look at the investment any differently.
The business opportunity differently.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit, Lauren, to what Co-Fertility does specifically?
I'd love
and then how like you've gone about solving that problem and sort of changing something that has been so historically one way.
Yeah. So egg freezing is this amazing science, this technology that we have available to us. The experimental label was lifted from it in 2012, and just the demand for it, the people who've done it has skyrocketed since, which is amazing to see. However, like the number one barrier for people, the thing that holds them back from doing it is the cost. It costs anywhere, it's like between $15,000 and $20,000 to go through the process yourself. And what we always say is that like the best time to freeze your eggs is when you can least afford it, right? It's the younger that you are, that's when you have the best egg quality and the greatest egg quantity, right? So like the time that you'd benefit from the most is when you are the least likely to have that kind of disposable, you know, cash laying around to do it. And so oftentimes the people who are doing it are like older and in more of a last ditch effort to save their fertility when it is not as beneficial to them. And so Hallie and I both just deeply believe that access is something that is so imperative for more people to be able to take advantage of egg freezing. Similarly, when we looked at egg donation, right? Egg donation is this process that requires an egg retrieval to go through it, right? It is something where an intended parent, so somebody who maybe has experienced fertility challenges or who has age-related diminished ovarian reserve, or you know, a same-sex male couple that definitely needs an egg donor to have a baby, right? They need the help of a third party to achieve their family building goals, right? And traditionally in the US, egg donation has been done with cash compensation, where the donor gets $10,000 or more, depending on her background, right? Her ethnicity, her religion, her education, her talents, all these things like warrant different cash compensation. I kind of, coming from Uber, I'm like, oh, it's like surge pricing for egg donors, right? Like the ones in more demand get, you know, higher comp. But what we found is like, not only is that like off-putting to the intended parent that they have to pay the donor these like varying amounts of cash compensation, but what we found is that that's actually off-putting to a lot of women who otherwise would be more than happy to help grow another family, right? It like literally makes them feel in a way like, oh, am I selling my body? This feels weird. Like I feel icky about this. And so what we realize is like, if we take that piece out of it, if we take cash compensation out entirely and instead offer women the opportunity to keep half of the eggs retrieved in an egg donation cycle and store them for free for up to 10 years, we're able to open the pie of women who are interested in egg donation in a way that's like never been done before, or never been done before at scale. And so that's exactly what we do. We call it a split cycle or egg sharing, where someone who's interested in egg donation and qualifies for egg donation has the opportunity to freeze her eggs for free when she donates half of the eggs retrieved to intended parents that can't otherwise conceive. She'll also have the opportunity to store those eggs for free for up to 10 years. We also offer, that's our split program. We have something called the KEEP program, where for women who either don't qualify to donate their eggs because there definitely are like strict clinical standards for that, or who aren't interested in donation, right? Egg donation is not for everybody, and that is like totally okay, right? Like we still want to provide them with a way to freeze their eggs, and we call that our KEEP program, where it's a self-pay option, but we help to lessen the financial burden with different partnerships that we have along the way. And then we also, you know, for intended parents, they can come to our platform. They can look at different donor profiles. They also have the opportunity to meet the donor as part of the process if they want to. We believe in like what we call a mutual match, where the donor also has to opt into it and say like, yes, I want to work with these intended parents. I think traditional egg donation, it's been very like anonymous, which isn't possible with things like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. So that's the solution that we've put forth. And what's awesome about it is that it really like kills two birds, right? It's this idea of both making egg freezing more accessible and helping to give intended parents more options in a way that feels more human-centered and aligned with their values.
And so you're able to bring costs down through the donation process.
Because they're not paying cash compensation.
Think about it.
Yeah. And it's been incredible to see, right? Like we raised our seed round shortly after Hallie and I connected, which was incredible. And then we really like took our time. We were really thoughtful about doing what Hallie said, which is like immersing ourselves in the problem. Like we spent months sort of just building a foundation, learning, being sponges, like really becoming experts. And then we launched almost a year or maybe a little less than a year later. So we launched October of 2022, and it has been the coolest, like most rewarding thing ever to like have this out in the world and to have, you know, our split members or donors who go through this process and say like, wow, like what an empowering experience it was to go through this and help somebody else while doing something for myself and for my future. And then just a few short weeks later to hear from the intended parent on the other side that they're pregnant. It's like the coolest, most magical thing that I kind of imagined would happen in this process, but like didn't know what it would feel like until it was real.
That's amazing. And in terms of like when you launched, what do you mean by like launch? Like what did that look like?
Yeah.
And out of curiosity, you know, for those that are watching and sort of thinking about their fundraising process and what that could look like, what the timeline looks like. You said you took a year, but like how did you sort of raise those funds ahead of knowing exactly what the outcome was or benchmark was going to be?
The survey that Hallie mentioned was really critical in that, I think, because investors wanted to know, like, are women really going to do this? Like, I don't know if I would do this. Would they do this? And I was like, well, frankly, like, you're not in the age demo. Like, we needed to talk to Gen Z, right? Like, we needed to talk to the people between the ages of 21 and 34 who would be candidates for this. And so that's what that survey did, right? And we learned that 66% of those respondents were absolutely open to this idea of egg sharing and wanted it, right? And so that was enough conviction for us. The minute I saw that, I told Hallie yes that day, right? I was like, oh my God, yes, let's do this. But it helped. It was a big part of our investor deck. And then from there, you know, we laid the groundwork, and then we did something that I actually learned at Uber, which is this idea of a soft launch, which is get something out there before you've publicly announced it, before you put it on your LinkedIn, before you talk to the whole world about it, so that you can test and iterate and learn before you have a ton of eyeballs on you, right? So throw up a landing page. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like we built something in Squarespace. Like it was not something that I like.
Don't invest a ton of money.
No, we did I remember we had funnel A, funnel B, funnel C, D, E. Like we were testing so every day. It was like, oh, we have to change this. We have to change that, right? So do that before you have interest and before you have eyeballs, learn from the people that you have coming in. And then when you feel good about it, and only when you feel good about it, do you like tell your story more publicly. So for us, like we announced, it's on my wall right here, we announced what we were doing in Fast Company. We announced our fundraise, and we launched. So initially we had done the split member side of the business. We wanted to make sure that we had donors available when we turned things on for intended parents to come look. Like if we had no donors for them to look at, there's no reason for them to come back, right? And that was sort of like at Uber, if we were launching a new city and we turned the rider side of the business on, but there were no drivers there, like it would never work, right? So it's about finding the balance for us between supply, demand. Not that I would ever think about it that way for this, but you have to make sure you're giving people a reason to come back. And so I think soft launching to make sure you're feeling confident and good and ready is like the way to go.
I love that. And it's such a good example. Founders are always asking, like, what do I, for a fundraising deck, I'm a startup, right? I don't know what traction looks like. How do I show product market fit? How do I show proof of concept? How do I show any sort of traction before I've even launched? And I think, Hallie, that survey was so crucial in that, right? In showing the intent for investors. And a lot of times that's enough. And then, like you said, plotting out, okay, how much we want to have sort of on the demand side versus the supply side in order to launch, and then bring the spotlight on. But I think what you also talked about with that iteration and launching a landing page is, I actually heard, I don't know if you all are familiar with Kimmy Scotty she has Neon. She used to be at 8BC, and she was at an event recently and was speaking on the fact that she's like, I used to, before I would launch anything, I would throw up these landing pages and just iterate on it. So that way you'd get a sense of demand. She's like, and then I would go produce the product after I knew exactly how much people were going to buy, which I think is just so smart, especially in today's world where capital is really hard to come by. Doing things like that to also make sure that you have a viable business it's super smart. And I think it's a good practice across the board.
I think you have to think about from the investor's standpoint, right? They want to reduce their investment risk as much as possible while not missing out on something that's going to be wildly successful. So they want to catch you at that point of like, you're almost a breakout. They don't want, as soon as you're a breakout, someone else might take the deal and you don't have a chance. So they want to kind of get in at that right time where the valuation makes sense for them, where it's as de-risked as possible. And so the easiest thing for an investor to say is like, it's too early. It's too early. I'll wait. And so if you really think about kind of from their perspective, like they want something to be as de-risked as possible. And especially now, there's a lot of price sensitivity on rounds of, valuations are way lower now than when we were fundraising. There's a lot more, there's a lot more competition from other founders. There are more founders that want fewer dollars that are being put in, and especially women founders have been hurt by the downturn. Women's health has been hurt by the downturn. So we kind of have a lot of things stacked against us. I mean, the good thing is, I don't know if you can say there's a good thing, but women are used to being super scrappy. We've always had a very small, disproportionate amount of venture funding. So we've always had to do more with less. So we know how to handle these times. But it's still unfair, and it's not great for anyone trying to fundraise right now.
And I want to jump in because there's, again, as I mentioned, a lot of questions from the community. So I want to jump into one of them sort of on that point, Hallie. As right now, if you are fundraising in the healthcare space and femtech and wellness, are there ways that you sort of recommend? Again, I think showing that traction, you guys already sort of spoke to this, but how do you create a deck or a pitch that is going to grab an investor's attention right now? Are there any other sort of ingredients that you're like, specific to right now, this is what you really want to think about?
it really all comes down to reducing the risk. And you have product risk, you have market risk, and you have people risk. And so there's some that you can control, some that you can't control, but really helping walk investors through your vision while showing that you've reduced a lot of these risks. So having, as we've talked about, some proof points that there's a customer base that they will pay for it, that's certainly helpful. Team risk, like execution risk, proving that you're the team to do it, I think means that you can show them that you've done something, even if it's small. Like, look, we're already getting moving. Like, you don't have to worry about us. We're not just talking. We can walk the walk. Here's what we've done so far. And I think that's a great way to kind of show that you're a team that can actually get stuff done. And then, market risk is a little bit harder because you don't really know where competitors are going to move and whatnot. But I think showing that you have kind of early traction is always the best way to reduce that risk. Every pitch deck is just a collection of dozens, if not hundreds of assumptions that the founder is making. So you just, a good investor is going to push back on your assumptions. They're going to do their homework. They're going to ask the right questions. And you just really need to be prepared to be able to respond and that your stuff, the problem intimately, and you have some early traction that shows that this solution is the one.
And when do you know when's the right time to basically seek out investment, in your opinion? I mean, I know you all did it before you had a product, but there might be some businesses that are like, when do I know product market fit is like at that place, or when should I sort of tap into additional wells?
Right now, if you can wait until second half of this year, I would. Right now is really not like a great time. Do you disagree, Lauren?
No.
Okay. Now is really not a great time. The last, 9 months have been atypical in the venture community, but we know that these funds have, they say dry powder, right? They have funding, right? They all raised their funds in 2020, 2021. They have the money to spend. Right now, they're just being extra cautious and slower to do deals. We saw fewer deals last year. The general sentiment is that this will probably turn around in the second half of this year. Do as much as you can, be as scrappy as possible. The best way to make money right now, to have funding right now, is make money from your customers. So if you can really focus on some key points of opportunity and really focus on those, I think that's the best kind of approach given the market.
I think the other thing I'll add to that, and I was going to say the revenue thing. So I think that's huge. The other piece of it is that, you mentioned imposter syndrome before, which I absolutely felt going into this whole thing. And having Hallie's faith in me and sort of built-in mentorship was a really big piece of this. But I think you have to believe that you are investable for somebody to want to invest in you. Right. So if you go in there showing any doubt in your mind that this is going to be the best decision that they have ever made in their investing career, it will show. And so that's just something to get yourself to a place where you feel so confident that there will be no other obvious answer, And
that might be those surveys, right? That might also help you to crystallize the opportunity for yourself of I know I can build this, but I want to make sure the customer is there and that I can actually make money for them on behalf of my investors.
Yeah.
I think those are both amazing pieces of advice. Lauren, since you, as Hallie mentioned, we're sort of built to be a CEO, and also since you've had such amazing experience also in corporate and sort of guiding and building teams and advocating for yourself and your business unit, can you speak to building a founding team and sort of how you've thought about team building from when you raised your seed all the way to now?
Yeah. And I realize how dark it is in my office given the rain outside. I think that where you can hire people you've worked with before, I highly recommend it, right? You lose so much time in the getting to know someone phase, right? And you don't have time to lose when you are trying to prove your business in a really short period of time. And so one of our very first hires was someone I had worked with at Uber Health, and literally from like the day I told her what we were building to the day she accepted her offer was less than a week. It was like the fastest thing ever because she trusted me, I trusted her, and like it was off to the races, right? So really lean into your existing network, people you've worked with before. And then once you've exhausted people you've worked with before, like don't give up on them. There's another hire that we have who I had worked with previously who took me 9 months before she said yes. And one of the best decisions ever, right? So again, there's that like relentlessness thing, but highly recommend that.
I love that one. I mean, I think half our team are folks that either you or I have worked with in the past, and it kind of it lets you bypass some of those like early awkward like communication things, especially a team that's fully distributed. Having the experience of like I know the love language of this person, like I know exactly what they need from me, is so helpful.
And then I want to ask about, because we had a founder ask, how do you get in front of VCs? What's a compelling way to do so if you maybe don't have a warm intro, which is kind of what everyone talks about. And then I'm going to plug for a second. We're actually going to be doing a pitch event at Female Founders Day, where we're going to put you in a room with a bunch of VCs and angel investors, et cetera. So I'll share a little bit more details in the comments, but that's on March 21st. But Lauren, hear your advice.
So I think that in any time you have a great conversation with someone about your business, whether they are a like just a friend or, you know, someone in your network, they don't have to be an investor, like asking them who they know who could be relevant to your business and taking any and every call early, right? And with that, like we had this experience where I'd be on the phone with someone and they'd be like, oh, can I invest, right? Like literally like just excitement coming out of them, or, oh, you know who you need to talk to is this person, right? We actually had somebody who said, I'll invest, but only if my other friend can too. Right? Like she said, like, I'll adjust my investment amount if you make room for her at the table, right? Like
what an amazing friend. And
right? Tell me about it.
What an amazing friend. I should just
so much from her. Yeah. And so I think like don't assume that just because someone's not an investor that they don't know investors. And imagine every room that you're in is full of people with checkbooks, because it is, right? Like you know,
I was going to say, and don't imagine that even if somebody hasn't invested in the past, that they wouldn't invest in you.
Yes, totally.
Unless they're not qualified.
Yep. Totally.
I have a longer, more time-intensive way, but that is a good way to get investors to come to you, which is really investing over months and years, being a thought leader in your niche. So being out there, writing the thought leadership pieces. What?
I was going to say, that's actually a great question that a founder asked of you all is, how do you put your personal brand out there and become a thought leader?
Yeah. I mean, everything that you're learning, just regurgitate that and share that with the world, right? So you have to be comfortable. And Lauren does not do this as much as I want her to. But I think but you know what? Like, not everybody needs to. But if you're someone who needs to attract investors and employees, and you're working in a specific field, like there are people who are seeking to invest in this space. And if you are the go-to person, they're going to look to you for that wisdom. And so having, you know, I kind of serve that now for us in terms of like being the one who's very vocal and blogging and tweeting about healthcare. But, you know, having a co-founder that does that, I think is really helpful, because then you're able to you're putting a flag out there, being like, I'm the person you should come to for this. And then when you have the company, the investors will just come to you. But that is a very like, you know, it's time intensive. It's years and years and years of work. So there are other probably
start at any time. Like you can start it. My husband, I joke he's a LinkedIn influencer now, but like he just decided one day he was going to do it, and he does. Like now he's like has a following, and you know
he's doing great on LinkedIn.
So
LinkedIn is super hot right now. It is like such a great place for people to engage. It's so much less toxic than Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are very nice on LinkedIn. I totally agree, and it's a great place. I think it's especially for thought leadership and this industry. It's a really important place, and I think especially for the healthcare industry and really anything in tech, it's so rooted in science that there's always new information coming out. And like you said, to be an expert on that topic, I think will really draw people to you, and the kind of people that you want. We are about at time. And so I have one last question for you both as like a quick answer in your head, but I'm wondering sort of where you see your next favorite opportunity in women's health, outside of what you all are doing.
Oh,
I have one.
Go for it.
Super into menopause.
I was
I'm not in menopause yet. I'm not physically
like,
there
wait,
yet.
actually,
No, not in it yet, but I'm into it, right? Like we're all going to go through it at some point, and every person, like regardless of whether you want to have children or not, right? Like it's something that you'll face, right? And so I'm really excited by what companies like MIDI are doing, and I think we need to put more attention on that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to actually say the same thing. I just turned 40, so menopause is right around the corner for me. And I'm thinking a lot about how I'm so grateful for these amazing founders that are starting the companies in the space today, because then they will be readily available and ubiquitous and hopefully covered by my health plan in a few years when I need those services. So I agree with Lauren on this one.
Amazing. So menopause companies, come forward, prepare for me and Hallie. I'm also right around the corner from it as well. And I'm like constantly thinking I'm in perimenopause.
Anytime it's hot, I'm like, is this a hot flash or is it just hot here?
Questions. Like even the fact that you're wondering that is an opportunity to be addressed.
It's so true. It's so true. There be whole companies for perimenopause as well.
Totally.
You all, I am so grateful for the time and for what you're building for all of us women everywhere. It's so important, and you clearly are the ones to build it. So thank you for doing that. A few reminders for all of you that are listening. Hallie is actually an expert and an advisor on the North, so you can actually schedule a one-on-one with her, which is, I just think it's an invaluable opportunity, as Lauren can speak to. Yes. Although we need Lauren on there to talk about building teams as well. And then also,
and all the money is donated to. Can you share? Because it does cost money to schedule a one-on-one, but we donate it all to. Can you explain that?
To explain to Female Founder Collective, yeah, our FFC actually is a foundation, and we create programs like Female Founders Day is one of them. But we create programs to help female founders succeed in their business through education, through connections, through direct grants. So we're super excited that she is so generously offering to do that. And then we also have Female Founders Day. I think I mentioned it. It's on March 21st. We have exited founders in every industry. We have leadership coaches. They're going to be talking about team building. We have people that are going to be talking about customer acquisition marketing, the nitty gritty, all the way up to the high level skills you need to succeed. It is my favorite day of the year by far. So definitely join us there. And we have our cohort closing on confirmed April 4th. So thank you all for being here, Hallie and Lauren. Again, so inspired by what you're doing and what you're building. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and for continuing on.
Thanks for having us. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.